This week's Torah portion brings us a remarkable moment of emotional, existential significance for Jacob, the patriarch. Just to give you a place where we are in the story, and as the Torah turns, episode, I guess, 5 at this point, Jacob is a fugitive from his brother Esau, who has vowed to kill him. He's been sent away by his mother Rebekah to her family, to the land of Haran. He leaves the comfort and the familiarity of his mother's warmth and love. In fact, the Torah tells us Rebekah loved Jacob. He leaves all of that behind to embark on an unknown, uncertain journey, fraught. One can imagine him as the hero, Homer's Odyssey. He's out on the road. I'm on the road to somewhere. We don't know. The Torah tells us that his fear is so deep that even after he wakes up from a dream in which he has a vision of the divine, wakes up and realizes that the place where he had had that dream is a place of the divine, he goes back to sleep. And then on the second waking up, even after God has promised him in the dream that God will be with him, Jacob's anxiety about the uncertain future is so profound that he creates a quid pro quo vow with God saying, if you'll do all those things that you promised to do. Jacob doesn't know. He doesn't trust. And he's terrified. The promise God makes to him is, Ki lo azavcha, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you until I do for you what I've promised. I'll bring you home. He says, I'm bringing you home. No matter what, wait for me to come home to bring you home. Wait for me to bring you home. And so that's the setup in the very next scene, where Jacob, now having been given the divine promise, but also assuring it twice that it will really take place. And it's kind of funny parenthetically that Jacob's quid pro quo is, if you do all the things you promised, then you'll be my God. I'm sure God was like, okay, great. Oh, really? Oh, cool. That's what I was hoping, you know. I promise, if you do all those things, you give me clothing and beged lilbosh and lechem lechol, food and garb, then vayisa li Elohim, then you'll be my God. God's like, cool, great. Whatever you need, Jacob. And so Jacob's on the run. And as he moves from scene 1 to scene 2 in the story, bringing with him his fear and his anxiety, he comes to a watering hole. Bum, bum, bum. There's a watering hole. And at that watering hole and the well in Haran, he will meet Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, his uncle. So Rachel is his first cousin. Their meeting, it seems, is not a chance encounter, but a divine appointment. A moment that will change the course of Jacob's life. Yaakov will never be the same and shape the destiny of our people. So imagine the scene. Jacob sees Rachel approaching with her father Lavan's flock, and he's overcome by a rush of emotions and a mixture of a bit awe and attraction. Perhaps a deep recognition is going on. And he runs over. Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel, vayisa es kolo vayevk. Jacob kisses Rachel, raises his voice, and begins to weep. This gesture is filled with tenderness, longing. Jacob kisses Rachel and then breaks down in tears. But why does he cry? I mean, why does he kiss her? Why does he cry after he kisses her? Let's just for a moment imagine that the rabbis were not altogether romantic in their inclination. Jacob doesn't kiss her because that's permissible in the Bible. It's clearly a strange moment. The rabbis, of course, concerned about the kissing, but I want to focus on the crying. There are several explanations offered by the rabbis. The interpretations go like this. Rashi notes that Jacob's tears stem from a sense of foreboding. He foresees that he will not be buried alongside Rachel. Let's hold that one. The Midrash suggests another alternative, that Jacob's tears reflect the heartbreak of arriving at Haran empty-handed. Having fled his home in haste, he left behind the gifts he had intended to give to his bride-to-be, and so he's crying, not because he sees in the future she won't be buried, but he's crying because he feels he showed up empty-handed. He has nothing to offer. We'll come back to that too. Another one, third interpretation, sees Jacob's tears. Yaakov is crying because it's a release of emotion. He has a mixture of joy and gratitude to God for guiding him to this moment. And in his tears, we see Yaakov's vulnerability, his longing for connection, and perhaps even a reflection of his love for his mother, Rebekah, whom he had left behind. And the third, he cries because he's vulnerable. He sees family, sees mishpacha. It's been a long journey, and he breaks down and cries. Let's look at each of these, a couple of minutes. This weeping that Rashi said over the future, the foreboding, the sense that he would see, that he saw, that he won't be buried with Rachel, it teaches us that love makes us profoundly aware of impermanence. Love is uniquely empowered to help us feel the fragility of life. Its temerity, its tenuousness, it's here, and the minute we start loving, all of a sudden everything matters more. There is no fear, and I've said this in the shul, and I'm sure I'm not the only rabbi from the pulpit to say there has never been a moment of radical fear as the fear I had driving my first son home from the hospital. Something so precious, something so important, something so, I could lose something now that I could never have lost before. And in this model, Jacob meets Rachel, and all of a sudden it's not just how happy he is to have found her, but all of a sudden, and I don't know if there's anybody here in the room that ever feels this, that at the moment of something so remarkable happening, he's already afraid to lose it. He hasn't even gotten it yet, and he's already anticipating losing it. And so Yaakov begins to cry in anticipation of that loss. When we deeply love someone, we open ourselves to the bittersweet truth that nothing lasts forever. This awareness doesn't diminish the love, it deepens it. It reminds us to cherish each moment that we have. Love opens us to vulnerability because it confronts us with the fragility of life and the ache of future loss. He cried in the second reading because he came empty-handed. This interpretation shows that love often reveals our inadequacies and our yearning to give more than we can. Sometimes when you're in love, you think to yourself, really? Is she really still with me? What have I got to offer? Or especially in the moment of potential love's blooming, a fear sets in of our own limits. What do I have to bring to the relationship? Love opens us to humility, teaches us to accept both our limitations and the generosity of others in the sacred exchange of connection. In the third and fourth interpretation, Jacob cries because, thank you, God, and you remind me of my mom. Love has the power to awaken in us a deep sense of the recognition of God's hand in our lives. When we experience love, we feel as though we've been touched by something greater than ourselves, a reminder that we are not alone on our journey. Love opens us to the gratitude of infinitude and its intersection with our finite life path. It connects us to the sacred, and it fills us with a sense of the mystery of how experience is possible, a sense that there is a greater arc, a greater drama, a greater story unfolding. We have a window into, a veil is lifted into potentially, wow, this is bashert. But in those tears of gratitude and joy, the last interpretation is that Jacob saw in Rachel the love of his mother. In Rachel's presence, maybe Jacob felt a resonance with the love and the safety that he had left behind in his home. He had lost it when he fled. He's been on the road now, and love opens him to the echoes of what he had just left behind and reminded him of the relationships that have shaped him, the connections that made him who he was. Each of these explanations highlights a different facet of love's transformative power. Love doesn't merely make us feel joy, it opens us to vulnerability, to gratitude, humility, and an ache of memory. I was reminded of all of these things this week. For those of you who have been with us since we started at 6 o'clock, we started with a melody. And the melody went something like this. V'te'erav lifanecha, may it be sweet before you. Dovkei libi hakosef, the heart pangs of a yearning heart. I heard that song back in 2014, and those words are from the Rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, Rav Kolonis Kalman Shapira. May my heart pangs be sweet before you. And so this week, a friend asked me to find the recording of that song that we had together. And so I went down my Apple photo tunnel, deep, dark, album upon album, looking for the right summer when I had heard that song. I found it. But before I knew it, and I'm sure nobody has ever done this before, I was in 2014. I could see at that point, Bear was 5 years old. My second son, Tal, was 3. And the one that's here wasn't even born yet. And so one year, one summer went into another, and before I knew it, I was awash in Rachel moments, crying, touched by the vulnerability of time, how precious it is, how hard it is to think back and remember exactly what I felt then, and how often my memories of the past are completely a distortion of really what took place. It opened me wide open. I thought, I'm not ready for this. It was just a Wednesday night. I'm Jacob walking from the ladder, and I'm not sure. And then there's Rachel, and then there's memory, and there's aching, and there's love, and there's opening, and there's sadness, and there's loss, and the whole catastrophe is unfolding from a request for a song. And the song was about the sweetness of our longings, that our sweet longings might be acceptable. How could they not be? To love is to open ourselves to all of those things. I imagine Jacob's tears. He's crying. Vayisa kolo vayefk. He lifts up his voice and he cries. Is this Jacob's real voice? I wonder. I wonder if his real voice is the voice of, this is what I want. I want Rachel. I want love. I want to be seen. I don't want to be on the run. I want it to be like it was with you, Mom, before you forced me to put on those skins and get the blessing that I'm not sure I ever wanted. I just want Rachel. She's the one that was always for me. I can feel the power of that weight on his shoulders, and as his voice lifts, it lifts. Vayisa kolo, his voice lifts, and he's unburdened and begins to cry. I thought of a song from Ed Sheeran called Photograph. We sang it in this shul a couple of times. This lyric really touched me. We keep this love in a photograph. We made these memories for ourselves. Loving can hurt. Loving can hurt sometimes. But it's the only thing that I know. When it gets hard, you know it can get hard sometimes. It's the only thing that makes us feel alive. Memories, photos, are sacred vessels that hold love and longing. They remind us of where we've come from and who we are. Jacob, I'm sure, did not have a photograph of Rebekah on him. But perhaps his tears as he looked at Rachel reflected the memories of her love. In seeing Rachel, maybe he felt that he was finally now found after having been lost, as though he had come home, even after leaving everything behind. Jacob's tears invite us to embrace moments of deep feeling that remind us of the beauty and the sacredness of love and connection. Jacob cried because he recognized the God's hand in guiding him to Rachel. And in that moment, his tears became a bridge between the past and the future, his longing and his newfound hope. How often do we experience profound emotions in our lives, moments that touch the depths of our souls? These moments remind us that love transforms. These moments remind us, whether it's romantic, familial, or divine love, it can heal us. I want to wonder not just about the personal, but about our country at this moment. Are we love-starved at this moment? Are we ourselves on a path looking for that which will allow us to remember love again, to remember what's most important, to remind us to open our hearts to God's presence in every moment of connection, even in the bittersweet ones that tear us up? Ed Sheeran's song ends with, "Wait for me to come home." When God promised Yaakov, "I won't leave you, I will bring you home." When he saw Rachel, he said, "Okay, God, I see. She's going to bring me home. He's going to bring me home." May Jacob's tears at that well inspire us to embrace our vulnerability, to hold the sacredness of our memories, and to see God's hand guiding our journeys toward love, understanding, gratitude, and home.